Good afternoon, everybody. Just making sure that everybody can see me, you can hear me, give me the thumbs up. We're good to go. All right, excellent, excellent. All right, while we are giving our guest a little bit of time to appear, and he's there actually, so excellent, excellent. I just want to really welcome everybody. This is just a tremendous occasion. It's a homecoming of sorts. So we're just immensely proud of Attorney Parker, of Steven Parker. So it's one of us, making us just Matador proud. Since the first time that I got an email sharing about his accolades, my chest just started to get just a bit bigger. So and it's also been good to be able to talk to him over the past few weeks, and just the accolades keep coming in, and I'm just thrilled that he's going to be addressing us. So I'm not going to give you the 20-minute bio. We even talked about that because I really want Steven to share his story of his journey from CSUN to essentially now with the U.S. Senate. So just a couple of things. Just want to go through some logistics here for a moment, and that happens to be that this will be interactive. So after Steven's presentation, we're going to do question and answer. But the way that you can do the question and answer is by putting the questions in the chat. And our esteemed colleague, our Director of Development in the College of Social and Behavioral Science, Tracy Baum, wave Tracy, let them know who you are. Tracy is actually going to be monitoring the chat, and he is going to assemble the questions. If some questions happen to have a particular theme, then he's going to put those all together, and he's going to ask those directly to Steven Parker. So just without further ado, let's bring, I know everybody's on mute here, but we'll at least do the visual clapping. Let's bring Steven Parker back home to campus, even in the virtual sense. So just thank you, welcome. We're really glad to have you. Glad you're just part of us.
All right, Dean, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to have the opportunity to join with my fellow Matadors and share a little bit about this amazing journey that this has that is presented. I'm grateful for Professor Mitchell, who was one of my poli-sci professors and also my advisor from Model UN, for reaching out and getting in touch and then connecting me with the dean. So CSUN has a very, very special place in my heart, guys. And so this was a no-brainer to me. Anytime I come back to California or come back to LA, I always drive through there. I always come see my Leanne Vincent. Oh, and she is the reason I come, and I'm always back on campus because I've got to come by and see her. So I figured, guys, I'd give you just a little bit of a journey, right? I mean, that's the dean set it up that way to kind of talk about my journey from CSUN to being on this race. So I'll give you a little bit of background. I'll spend a considerable amount of the 20 minutes or so I have talking about my CSUN experience. I'll zip through the in-between stuff, and then I'll end us with my experience on the campaign, and then I guess we'll have some time for questions. So I was born in the Imperial Valley, guys, south, about 60 miles south of Palm Springs, in the middle of the desert. I used to tell people just this side of hell. Our summers in August would get to 200 and, that's not possible, is it? It would get to 120 degrees in August. It would be awful, guys. And then the humidity would be at 95%. And we had to do 2-a-days in football. So in the mornings, at 6 a.m. in the morning, it would already be 90-something degrees out because of the radiant heat from the day before, and people would die of heat strokes and the whole nine. I was born in a single family with my mother and my 2 siblings. We grew up in government housing. Part of the time we were on government assistance. The other part of the time, my mother was working 2-3 seasonal jobs because there's a big agricultural industry there. And one of the things I really appreciate about my mother is she encouraged me to get involved. So I was a student athlete. I wrestled, ran track, played football, and I also got involved in student government. My first a sort of official engagement was as a safety patrol officer in the 6th grade. It was my job to hold that stop sign that you lean out to let people, tell people to stop as students were crossing over. And since then, I went on and had a little more aspiration and decided to run for president of every class and every school that I've been in. So I participated in high school things there, and then I moved to Visalia, which is in the central part of the state where my mother lived, and I went to College of the Sequoias there. I ran for student body president. I was the first Black student body president at College of Sequoias. I was a captain of the football team, and I was a soloist in the chamber choir. My first time getting to a bit of a Renaissance man in training, guys. It was my first opportunity to go to Hawaii. We went on tour in Hawaii. We went on tour in Australia. The world just kept opening up for me. And I told you the beginnings were single family home, government housing, not a lot of examples around me of people doing well and getting out. But because of my engagement and involvement in school with athletics and student government, I saw a whole different world, and it just swept me up, and I've been drunk with it since. When it came time to move on from the community college experience, I determined I wanted to be a radio, television, film major. I wanted to be a news anchorman. I didn't have Bernard Shaw of CNN back then as an example. So it was, Cronkite, of course, was still around a little bit early on, and Dan Rather, those guys, I really wanted to be that guy who was reporting the news in a very poised, but very educated way. So I applied for San Francisco State University and Cal State Northridge. San Francisco State University lost my application. They lost it. And that was my first choice. So I said, well, I guess I'll go south. Hey, Benita Russell, I think I will go south and go to LA and have my education there. So I got there, I had my journalism class, guys, and they completely tore up the way that I was accustomed to writing. It was painful. So I happened to also have a political science course. And I thought, this is interesting. It's current affairs. It's we're discussing things that are going on around us. I think I'm going to change my major. So I ended up switching from RTVF to political science. And that was my first semester there. After that, I started to get an interest in student government. I'd been involved in high school and junior high. I was president of my community college, which had about 8,000 students. And at the time at CSUN, it was about 35,000 students. So I was like, there's nowhere in the world, I'm going to get lost here, but I could probably at least be a senator. So I became one, had a good term there. And then I was asked by the next administration to be the director of finance. You get to kind of look at the budgets for all the clubs and determine how much they get, year in and year out. And then ultimately, 93, 94, I became president. Now, I spent 2 years at the community college. I did 4 years at Cal State Northridge. I could have finished in 3, but I stuck around to run for president, and I was able to devote quite a bit of my time there. And forever grateful to Bill Foster for being an advisor who was both empowering and constraining. He had a knack for saying, hey, you're the president. You all are the students, you all are in charge, you can get this thing done the way you want to, but then he had that way of sort of shepherding me back in. My time in the student government at Cal State Northridge was one of the most memorable periods of my life, and a big part of that is because of the relationships I developed. Tom Piernick was just an advisor, but he became more than that during that time. Leanne Vincent was the secretary, but she became my confidant and my friend and my source of knowing how to navigate. And Rodney Lazar became the reason that I became the president. I became president because we both approached this saying he was going to run for president and said, hey, I think you'd make a great vice president. And I said, well, take me along with you. I thought, that's wonderful. You've got the aspiration. I'm ready to do it. And then there was some time went by, and he said, you know what, Stephen, I know we're planning to do this thing, but I think we stand a better chance if you run for president and I run for vice president. Guys, who does that? Who assesses a situation and decides that, that they're going to take a back seat to it. But when we ran, guys, we ran as partners, and this was the result of our wonderful race. We ended up winning our race and ended up going forward with a very successful time there. Benita Russell, who I mentioned before, she was my executive assistant while I was there. Keith Weaver, who is a distinguished alum of the university and is over at Sony doing his thing, was my attorney general during that time. It was fun being a part of the committees that brought a new provost, Luann Kennedy, a new athletic director, and a new student union director in the form of Deborah Hammond, way back during that time. We had some controversial situations happen on campus. We had Louis Farrakhan come, and that was caused a little dust up, guys. We had Maya Angelou come though and bring a level of healing and class and art to us in a way that was amazing. And my goal at some point was also bring Cesar Chavez on, but that was also the year that he happened to he passed away. My experience at CSUN was also one where I almost became an alpha and became a Black Greek. But the problem, and if there are any of them on here from back then, the problem was that y'all came after me when I was a senior and was already student president, sitting on 4 or 5 boards, running a $1.7 million budget, and I just wasn't willing to subject myself to the initiation process, as it were. The biggest thing that happened in 1994, though, guys, was the Northridge earthquake. Dr. Watkins, I see you, man. Yeah, nice to see you, man. That's another relationship that was valuable to me. I have the distinction of having been the first Black student body president at College of Sequoias, but by the time I made my way to Cal State Northridge, I could only distinguish myself as being the third Black president at Cal State Northridge because Dr. Watkins has already secured the first spot. But the counsel you gave me, Dr. Watkins, back in the day was invaluable as well. So after the earthquake, it rocked us. We didn't know if we were going to get back to school, if we were going to be able to graduate. We ended up meeting in these military tents, military grade tents. But the beautiful thing is not only in our society, folks really lent a helping hand to each other, and that showed up on campus as well as fellow Cal State Northridge student governments raised money for us to be able to give book grants to our students during that time. It was really, really amazing, an amazing outpour of humanity in our city and also at our university. After we started sort of getting ourselves back together, there were a string of elected officials who came through to view the damage to the Oviatt Library and to our parking lots. And that included Carmen, hello, I just saw you and recognized you, good to see you too. That included Vice President Gore and Senator Boxer and Mayor Richard Reardon and Senate Pro Tem Roberti. They all came through. And on the day that they were coming through, guys, I put my best suit on at the time and I printed out my resumes because I thought, here's an opportunity to get in front of these guys. Tiffany Friesen, hello, high school mate. It was an amazing opportunity to get these in people's hands and maybe get an opportunity out of it. And I ended up in an internship with the Senate Pro Tem, David Roberti, and also with Mayor Richard Reardon. So I had a wonderful opportunity to be in that office and to learn a lot that all really started though at CSUN. And so the conclusion of my time at CSUN, guys, was that I made long-lasting friendships and relationships. I also had, it essentially was my period of sort of sandbox politics, learning how to push an agenda, learning how to coalition build, learning how to make concessions, learning how to trust. I learned that I trust too much in some instances and I trusted too little. That move, and I, it was my opportunity to try different political moves. Willie Brown was one of my idols at the time, just in studying how he would move around guys and get things done. And there was a time, Rodney, you'll remember this, there was some matter before the Senate and it was going to come up and we were not in favor of it. And we had quorum, guys, by 1 vote. And so Rodney and I had a moment where it's like, hey, if we don't have a quorum or this thing looks like it's gonna pass, we've got to do something about it, buddy. So that matter came up to, just before the matter came up to vote, Rodney and I ended up counseling for a moment. And guys, Rodney got up and walked out of the room, thereby leaving us in a situation where we did not have quorum and we could not continue to conduct our business. And I promptly adjourned the meeting because we did not have quorum anymore. That set off a lot of fireworks, a lot of unhappy people. But that was one of the times where I'm learning, how do we, was that right? Was it fair? Dealing with the morality of how to govern and all of that sort of thing. It was some of my first experience of sort of reconciling whether to take a Machiavellian approach or be driven sort of out of the faith center that I have. I'm a spiritual person, and faith plays a huge role in my life. And so that time helped me sort of iron out where my motivations come from, how to treat people, and also how to get things done. And I'm still working through the interplay between being Machiavellian and having that your decisions come from another place. While I was there at Cal State Northridge and even left there a little bit afterwards, I attended church on the way there in Van Nuys and was really involved with things there. And then eventually I went up and served with Andre Crouch in the New Christ Memorial Church of God in Christ, and ended up being the youngest member to ever chair that board of trustees. So it's just, being at CSUN and being in LA at that time just opened up so much. I want to run you through just the in-between time, and then I'll talk a little bit about my experience here with Jon, and then I think we'll open it up. After I left Cal State Northridge, guys, I went up to Sacramento. I got accepted in the Senate Fellow program. So I got to work on the Senate Insurance Committee in Sacramento. The member at that time, Senator Herschel Rosenthal, decided to hire me after that one-year fellowship, and I came back and was a field rep for him in the Valley. The mayor had remembered me and people on his staff when I did an internship there. So when a Valley area deputy community affairs manager position opened, I got a call and ended up representing the mayor in the San Fernando Valley. 4 of the best years of my life, being able to get things done, guys, on the local level, being able to call the right people to get potholes filled, trees trimmed, and signs removed. I mean, that's some of the most satisfying work there is, because it's where the people live. Had the honor of working with Mike Weintz and Monica Rodriguez, who is now a council member for the 7th District in Northeast San Fernando Valley. And I also, Senator Alex Padilla was Dianne Feinstein's deputy in California at that time. And I remember him coming by and us sitting and talking about, so who do I get to know? And who are the players, and how do I navigate? And now he doesn't need me for any of that. Had the wonderful pleasure of working for Tom LaBonge, who recently passed away. He worked for John Ferraro many years, and then also worked for Mayor Reardon as the field ops director. One of my political mentors, and his passing has really been awful. I went on to do a couple campaigns, decided, hey, I think I'll go to law school now. I always wanted to do it. If I ever chose to run for office, I should have it. Got to law school, decided, I think I may practice a bit. Had a couple of great summers, had a little crisis of decision about whether I would want to go work for a corporate law firm versus be a public defender or a prosecutor. And I chose to go ahead and be a corporate attorney. I did corporate real estate litigation in Birmingham, Alabama. I swore, guys, I would never live in the South. I had my fill of heat and humidity in the Imperial Valley, and I just and wasn't a big fan of the the history of the South. So I'd written the South off a long time ago, but went there and had an amazing experience, guys. People are people, and there's a great deal of good folks all across this country, and I found a ton of them right there in Birmingham, and could imagine myself making a life there. One of the interesting observations I made, guys, and I don't know what I have, another 10 minutes, 8 minutes, is that when I worked for the mayor in Los Angeles, you have the West Side where there's a Jewish population, and South LA where it's Black, and East LA where it's Latino, and the Valley where it's white, and you got all these pockets. And I thought we were so evolved in California, being able to get along with each other. But anytime when I did events with the mayor and people from different parts of the town were together, there was this sort of awkward sort of I don't, I accept you, but I don't quite know how to interact with you. When I got to North Carolina, when I got to Alabama, Black people and white people were calling each other hon and sis and sweetie, and they were interacting in a way I was like, this doesn't look like the Black and white films I've seen and what the reputation that happens in the South. And then I concluded that, well, Black people and white people have coexisted for so long. There is that nicety, there is that engagement that exists. It's just, it can be a different story, when it comes down to interactions, maybe on an individual level at times. But that was just an interesting dichotomy for me, seeing how we thought, I thought we were so evolved on the West Coast, but there was this awkward interplay. And yet in the South, folks really seemed to know how to engage with each other. After Balch, corporate law is not for me, guys. If there are any corporate headhunters on here, I mean, you can mute me or do something because I might need you someday, but corporate law ground me up. I was there for 7 years. After 4 years, I decided I didn't want that grind anymore, but it took me 3 years to get out of it. The hours are very demanding. And I've concluded that there are very few people who are actually made to do that work. When I decided to leave the practice, I cannot tell you how many partners said to me, because I thought, hey, I'll leave the practice, I'll go do something else, and when I come back, maybe I can be different with it. And one of the partners was like, well, why in the hell would you do that? I mean, do you know why I'm here? Because I have a mountain house, I have a boat, I have children, I have all of that. I'm here because I have to be here now. I have the golden handcuffs on now. And one partner, guys, I was talking to her, and she's like, Steven, the minute this happens, and she pulled out 2 lottery tickets. The minute this happens, I'm out of here. Because it is a soul grinding practice, guys. But there are some people who are made for it. So those of you who are on and you love it, bless you. But it just wasn't quite for me. But I was there 7 years. And thankfully, one of my clients called and said, hey, we'd love to have you in-house. And I signed before I could know it. I was on the road before I knew it, and moved down to Jacksonville, Florida. Had a great time. Got my life back. It was in this kick of sort of this simplicity kick, guys, where I sold everything I had one couch, one table, this tiny 500 square foot apartment. And that job was the one where I made the most money I've made on the job. But I lived really meagerly and found a new level of fulfillment in living that way. And then I got the call that, hey, we're merging offices and there's going to be some layoffs. And people were falling like flies left and right. And I said, but I think I might survive this. And then the last month of all these cuts, I got my call and it said, friend, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is your number has come up and you too now are laid off. The good news is you'll get a parachute of some kind. So got the parachute and decided, guys, at that time that, you know what, I'm going to give myself the gift of a year off. So in that year, I decided I'm going to go to Europe. I'm going to allow myself to get up, and as long as I'm doing a physical practice, a mental practice, a spiritual practice, that's what's going to guide each one of my days. So I would get up and think, what do I want to do today? So aside from going to Europe for a bit, studying for a portion of the Georgia bar, I would just sort of live as I wanted to for a year. And I don't know where I got the courage, guys, to think that would all work out for me, but I did, and I'm really grateful to myself for giving myself that gift. And I also was called to help out a gentleman running for Congress at the time. Jon Ossoff ran for Congress in the 6th district, one of the most conservative districts in the country at one point, when it was represented by former Speaker Newt Gingrich. And the folks have been moving into Georgia, and the demographics had kept shifting, and thought that would be an opportunity to grab back that seat. And it also happened to be one of the first races that was going to sort of test the power of Trump at the time, because he was just elected not long before the fall before that. And the idea was, let's check to see where people are. Well, John fell just short of that, a few points from winning, but the seat now is in the hands of Lucy McBath, the Black woman who is the congressperson from that area. After my year was up, almost to a week, guys, I ended up at the city attorney's office in Atlanta practicing commercial real estate transactions. And I chose that because I wanted to add that other dimension to me. I'd had the real estate litigation experience, and then I moved on to have in-house experience. And I thought, now I can do transactional law, and I'll stay here and I'll move off to a development company at some point. Then I got a call. And that call was, hey, Steven, I am thinking about running for US Senate. What will it take to get you to quit your job and come work for me? And we worked through the numbers, guys. We crunched them, and Jon invited me to come and to be his political director this go around. He's a media executive who owns a media production company, and they investigate corruption and organized crime around the world. He went to Georgetown, the School of Foreign Service there, and he has his master's from the London School of Economics. He ended up working for a congressman for a while in DC as a national security aide, and ran in 2017, learned a lot, stayed active, and then came back this way around. And it's pretty impressive, guys, that he won his primary race. There were several folks in it, and we exceeded 50% in getting it. And at the time when he was assessing it, this was going against David Perdue, who has one of the biggest political families in Georgia. His cousin is the ag secretary and a former governor, and had a strong, solid political operation. Some folks were saying, why don't you go for the other seat that's coming open with Isaacson, because it'll be a jungle primary. You can jump in there and be the leader of the pack. And there's a number of reasons why he chose to challenge Perdue, but it was, I'm glad we ended up choosing that way, because after winning, we're now in that seat that'll hold for 6 years versus the Loeffler seat that'll be up again shortly. At the beginning of our race, Perdue had $10 million in the bank, and Jon had about $500,000. And if you've been watching this at all, you know that all the records were shattered. I mean, Jon in that race in 2017 shattered congressional races for most expensive House race and the most volunteers gathered to support a race. And we've done the same thing here, where we've shattered all of we've shattered so many records of the early turnout. In our primary, there was 1,186,000 people who voted in the primary, guys. And when Stacey Abrams ran, and she's a darling of Georgia as well, and expected to run for governor in a few years, there were 550,000 people who voted in that primary. So we had almost twice the amount of folks. We had twice the amount of folks who showed up in our primary, and it's just, I can throw stats at you, but it's amazing how many folks ultimately came out to vote. And then what's more amazing is the number of people who participated in the runoff. We had like 5 million folks in the general, and like 4 million plus who voted in the runoff. And I'm just really proud. I spent a considerable amount of time with this man, and I want to wrap up here, guys, and leave time for some questions. But as his body man in 2017, I was with him every day for 2.5 months from 7 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night. And I got to see him at his best, at his worst, at his highest, at his lowest. And I left him at the end of that race thinking, this guy is the real deal. He's certainly sharp enough, and he's got the passion and compassion to do well for Georgia. You can rest assured, guys, that we've got a very bright, very sharp guy. Ashley Cecil, I see you on there, colleague. You can attest to this. Very sharp and bright individual who will do us and the nation well. Guys, who would have thought that I would end up in the South, where I swore I would never live, end up joining a guy who was an upstart in 2017, going on and doing your own life, and then coming back around in 2020, and then being at the heart of flipping the US Senate, electing the first Black senator from Georgia, electing the first Jewish senator from Georgia. It's truly remarkable. It's been a great ride, and I expect it to continue. Dean, have I spoken long enough?
But we want to hear more. There's one more thing. I'm giving you that little nudge right now that there's a, can I nudge you? Can I nudge you just a little bit? Just to reveal a little something. So we got the insider information. So everybody here is you're on the VIP connection right now. So go ahead.
All right. Well, I went back and forth with Dean on this because I haven't announced anything, but Last night, I just accepted a job as the deputy state director for Senator Ossoff here, and will be in charge of outreach and making sure that our field reps are providing the services that we promised to do when we were on our election. So yeah, so I'm proud, and I didn't even put it on my social media yet. Leanne, Rodney, Tiffany, look for it. Ashley, look for it. It's coming. But I guess y'all are getting it first. But I'll be posting that soon. And I couldn't be happier, guys. We're gonna really be able to do some great things for Georgians. So I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. You really do make us proud. So right now we're going to open it up to some questions. Again, Tracy Baum is going to be monitoring them. So please place them in the chat, and we'll go from there.
Good afternoon, Stephen. Thank you for sharing your inspiring journey with us. You are yet another example of a CSUN success story.
Thank you.
Kayla Latzer posed the first question, and that is, tell us about which law school you attended and what motivated you to choose that law school. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I went to North Carolina Central Law School in Durham, North Carolina. It's an HBCU. And I was living in the Raleigh area, so I applied for the law schools in that area. And this is the one that I got in and gave me the most support to go there. Law school was probably one of the most grueling experiences I've ever had, guys. I like structure. I like, I like to be able to sort of parse out what I'm doing and timeframes and all of that. But this one put me to the test. And I had scheduled my lunches and the times that I would eat dinner and the time I could work out, how long I could spend hanging out. Hanging out's supposed to be hanging out, right? My hangouts were 35 minutes, and then I've got to get back on it because I've got to work hard to be in these books, and they throw more on you than you can ever imagine. You cannot keep up for the average person. There are some people, again, their brains are made in such a way that this is, that they might have a bit of a leg up in how they process law school, but I had to work really hard and study a ton. I would not do it again. I'm glad I did it. But it was one of those experiences where it was a one-dimensional life for 3 years.
Thank you. The next question comes from Tom Hoganesh, chair of our Department of Political Science. Could you please highlight the benefits for students of doing a political internship as they progress through their studies?
Yeah, it gives you a leg up on seeing how things operate. My first one with Senator David Roberti allowed me to understand that there was a ton of casework to get done with state agencies. And then I got to go out with some of the field reps and see how we interact with folks in the community who also generate needs from the office, and then seeing how the various offices, in this instance, the state senator's office interacted with the council district that overlaid, the congressional office that overlaid. It was just a tremendous education that took my academic understanding to an experiential understanding of how it all works. Invaluable. If anyone has an opportunity to intern, whether it's in the political field or corporate or nonprofit, it will give you a leg up, and it'll all make sense when you get on the other side and get in.
Thank you. Our friend and colleague, Dr. William Watkins, wants to share how proud he is and we are of what you've accomplished, and I'm sure what you will accomplish. Could you share with us the personal predispositions and values that students need to have to be positioned for the success and service you have experienced?
Yes, the character is everything. I think it starts there. I think it is practicing the some of the time-proven practices that get people to where they are. So being a person of your word, being a person who might be slow to speak, quick to listen and slow to speak. I think putting in the time. Some people, I had a couple of people on the campaign who you could tell them right off, guys, they just wanted to be in photos with Jon. That's why they were there. They put a little work in, but they kept trying to angle so that they could be where he is. And the ones who put in their time, like Ashley Cecil, who was on here, who's a deputy scheduler, those folks show up as well. And so doing what you say you would do, showing up on time, working hard, being a person of your word. Guys, we hear that from our grandparents, right? These are some old values that ring true still in making yourself a success. To me, that's the foundation. And once you have that foundation, then you just sort of fine tune your interaction with folks and how you do your job. But that would be the foundation for me, character.
Thank you, Stephen. Audrey Thacker wants to know, how did anti-Semitic diatribes against the now Senator Ossoff and anti-Semitism in general in Georgia help shape the trajectory of the campaign?
Well, I'll tell you, when you've got an opponent and Senator Perdue who allowed one of his operations to Photoshop a photo of John and extend his nose, and then include him and Leader Schumer on an email, and then to their supporters, and then suggest that we cannot let them buy this election. When those sorts of mistakes are made, it's an opportunity for us to call them out and call it what it is, and then sort of force people to decide if that's acceptable to them or not. But secondly, it's a wonderful raise opportunity, guys, because people are so upset when they see that kind of anti-Semitism or racism that they want to do something. And for those of you who are not here in Georgia and can't knock on a door or come help us in some way, you give money. So that's what ends up happening. And so it helped shape it in that it fired up our base. It made people want to give more money to make sure that we get in a Jon Ossoff and get out a David Perdue.
Thank you. Tom Hoganesh, Chair of Political Science, wants to make a shameful plug for students. Consider enrolling in the political science internship PS 494. Contact Boris.Ricks at CSUN.edu. That's BORIS.RICKS at CSUN.edu. From our friend Robert Borgstrom, he wanted to share with you that he is delighted that you and John were successful. He'd like to better understand your view on the key reason or reasons why you succeeded in that critical election.
Yeah, Stacey Abrams has a lot to do with it. She set out a plan, guys, some years ago that we could win here if we had voter turnout. But the issue wasn't that there weren't enough Democrats here. They've got to believe that they're here, and then they've got to show up. So the critical components of our election were voter contact, and then there was something that John came up with, which has never been done in a race before, is he came up with this idea, guys, of social media mobilizers, social media field organizers. So the idea was that we would go find people who might have 1,000 followers on their Instagram or Facebook, and find folks who are not politically active, hire them, and push content to them to push to their people. So you would normally think, I want to go get other political folks, and those political folks will get their political folks. And that happens by virtue of us being here. So that by default, we're getting those folks in. But we wanted to go after the people who are not involved and have them push content to their people. And we think that made a critical difference as well. We ended up hiring about 2,000 folks who spent 15 hours a week at $15 an hour posting content. So we believe that sort of kept the enthusiasm and the mobilization up, but that sort of fell in line with our voter contact emphasis.
Thank you. From our friend and colleague, Dean Farrell Webb of the College of Health and Human Development, it is important to talk about how to not be defeated by setbacks. What was your most difficult experience, and what did you do to overcome this?
As it relates to the campaign, I imagine, yes? Or in life?
Yes.
Okay. Probably COVID. we started out in the fall and we were gung-ho, hitting all the events and getting around the state. And then COVID hit and no one knew what to do in a COVID era. How do you campaign if you can't touch people and gather people? So we, along with other campaigns that were happening in the country, had to be innovative. And, thank God for Zoom and Google Meets and all these other platforms that have allowed us to still connect with folks. So there was about a month and a half, 2-month period where I think most campaigns put the brakes on and had to reevaluate, can we keep the staff we built up to this time? And then when we determined that, we can continue these connections with folks, it's just gonna have to be in a virtual world. So that was probably the most difficult. I would say it was money, but Jon is a prolific fundraiser, and in the beginning of the campaign, that didn't show. He was able to raise quite well and be competitive, and in fact was the raised more than the other folks combined during some of the quarters, but it really kicked in later on. So that wouldn't have been the biggest challenge. I really think it is.
Actually, I bet in your life, I knew about the campaign. Ossoff got some of my money too. So I just wanted to ask you, because you've had such great experiences. The campaign is just one part, but that's not who you are. You're more than all of that. So that's what my question was really about.
Good. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah. So the biggest obstacle, I think, was being in my upbringing and somehow breaking through my upbringing. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have access to powerful people. And when I look at my life, guys, and so this is a little personal, but when I look at my life, there were a number of people who came along in my formative years who said, Steven, wow, how handsome you are. Steven, wow, you're a great athlete. Hey, you're really, really smart. Wow, that was a great decision you made. I got that from home a bit, but I got that a bit more because I kept putting myself out. I got that a bit from people who were around me. And so something started to happen where I started to believe that I could live beyond or grow beyond the circumstances that I was in. And so I became adventurous and I started signing up for things that would expose me to other things. So that's probably what made the difference for me.
Thank you. Our friend and colleague, Patrick Bailey, states that currently Associated Student President Rose Meridia is number 66. You were number 38. This spring, Matadors will elect Associated Students President number 67. Why would you encourage a student to run for office and to become involved?
Well, I've always been interested in being in politics. So for me, it was clear. This is going to allow me to hold an office and have to work with people. So that was my motivation. So if that is number 67's motivation, then they should absolutely do it because it allows one to get the experience that they will have when they get out, but have it in an ecosystem where they're able to make more mistakes and then not have such long-lasting ramifications. And if it's a person who's not particularly going to go to politics, but they just kind of want the experience, I think it enriches the experience at the university to actually get to know administrators beyond their titles, to manage a budget, to have to work with other people who have varying views. We had a few senators who had views during my year that people just could not understand, and yet we had to work with folks. So that's the reason. Those are the reasons I would encourage folks to do it.
Thank you. Timothy Wilson poses the following thought and question: with a recent past of European Jews in the South assimilating into the white Southern construct of Jim Crow and segregation in Georgia, how hard was it to repair the bridges between Blacks who grew up during the segregation and Jews who sided with it?
Well, I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that question. I was not involved in helping to repair that bridge. So I mean, I want to be respectful of the question, but I wasn't engaged in much of that.
Thank you. Riza Aladdin said, thank you for taking the time to do this live event, which we all are so very grateful to you for. What do you think about the Equality Act?
The Equality Act.
This says Quality Act, perhaps Equality Act. I'm reading verbatim. I can continue.
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the
it looks like I missed Michael Neubauer's question. Forgive me, Michael, who posed this question. How do you balance work and fun?
It was very difficult to do. I had to make some hard decisions when I came on to the campaign. My dating life took a major hit. There is no time. And I would have been fooling myself to think that I could maintain something while being on a campaign that requires everything. There are very few things, guys, that are comparable to working on a campaign and then one on this scale. And there is little left of you at the end of it. So there wasn't much balance. And I am still owed 7 days on a beach somewhere where I can forget about everything and everyone and be restored to myself. Because again, going 16 months, working in an area that is just one-dimensional, it takes its toll. So I don't know that I'll be doing a ton more of these campaigns. I think this is going to be my sunset on of being disinvolved in a campaign.
How you can accomplish that in 7 days, I don't know, but I'm very impressed. I'd like to follow your lead. Alexander Medina asks, how were policy positions shaped during the campaign to appeal to swing voters and moderate Republicans in Georgia?
Yeah, so that process involved reaching out to folks and consulting people across the board. But the primary things, the development of policy starts with the candidate. So, you've got to start with where the candidate is on those. And then we, of course, engage in determining how voters feel about various issues. And then so how it plays out is that the messaging plays out in a way that you engage folks through the media and engage folks in settings like town halls and whatnot to engage them and go to deeper levels in what the policy issues are. So in one of the instances, we developed a policy around HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. And so we consulted with constituencies, listened to them, and then ended up with our policy. And the same was true with healthcare. And at the end of the day, there's a determination made, like during the general election, the number of persuadables was, it hovered between 8-10%. And then when you get to the runoff, that percentage is really small, guys, because people by that time have really made up their minds about who they want. So there's not a phase, in that phase, there's not a huge push to try to persuade people to go one way or the other. But during the general election, it is a matter of starting with the policies that the candidate has and then messaging them to folks at the end of that process.
Thank you. This is a follow-up from Timothy Wilson, who wrote, the reason I presented the question that way is that the Northern Jewish people who came down to the South to assist in breaking the back of Jim Crow. If he wanted to share that addendum with you. From Marta Lopez Garza, she wrote, I understand that the victories in Georgia had a lot to do with the cross-racial mobilization of Black, Asian, and Latino communities, including community-based groups such as My Gente. This is from Rodney. As your old partner, I pray that you have at least one more election that you will appear super involved in. as a candidate. What does that path look like for you?
Rodney, yeah, when I was in my 20s there with you, I figured, I might run for something, and I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Man, I've seen too much, and I don't know that I have that fire in the belly to run. I have shifted in my older age at being more interested in helping others attain that goal if that's what they'd like to do.
Thank you. We have about 4 to 5 minutes left. If there's anyone who would like to use the chat to pose a question, commentary, now would be a perfect time before we conclude. Leanne Vincent asks, do you have a favorite memory of CSUN?
Why is that the toughest question I've received?
Because there are so many favorite memories.
That's exactly right. I mean, oh gosh, favorite moment. I mean, I was really thrilled to be elected president. I was really thrilled that Carmen would invite me to do news shows at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. in the morning after the earthquake. I got to stand in on some. I was thrilled that Bonita Russell was the best executive assistant anyone could ever have, and Leanne Vincent was the best secretary anyone could. There are a number of favorite moments, and I could go down this path if you'd like me to, Tracy.
Well, we are actually on limited time. I have a question from Timothy Wilson. What are some of the top priorities for Ossoff for his Georgian constituents this year?
There are a number of hospitals, rural hospitals that shut down, guys, where folks have an hour, 2-hour drive to places. So one of the top ones is in the realm of healthcare and seeing these hospitals opened up again. Another is, of course, COVID relief. There's COVID relief discussions happening now in Congress, and he is right in the thick of making sure that cities will have what they need to combat COVID. And then, he has touted that in the area of justice that we need a new Civil Rights Act, one that guarantees protection for all people. We've had a number of incidences around the country that has awakened quite a few folks about some of the work that Black Lives Matter has been doing, and that's going to be one for him as well.
Thank you. Dean Searcy, I understand there's a question you would like to pose to Stephen as we make our way toward the finish line. Kayla expresses a feeling that we all share, and we thank you so much for what you've done, the time you've given us, your inspirational stories about your journey at CSUN, and how your academic success was parlayed into career success. We are so very grateful for your participation today, and congratulations on your success. It's certainly Senator Ossoff's success. We could use him as a fundraiser at Cal State Northridge. We're having a tremendous success with our comprehensive campaign for student success, the first ever, in fact, in the university's history. It is a $200 million campaign, and we are proudly just about 3/4 of the way to goal. So I'm going to get you many opportunities.
There, Steve.
So I'll turn that over to you at this point, as we've got another few minutes. Dean Searcy.
So I have one question, and I know this is just the beginning of a long relationship, at least between us, but then also you have this long-standing relationship with the university, so that's wonderful. My question is about the day-to-day activities of the political strategist, which the role that you played. It's like you said, it was basically from, we're talking 18-hour days. And can you talk a little bit about that? And I know it's your humility coming through. So you're putting everything on the senator, but that strategy is coming from that. I'm just going to throw this out there, that CSUN molded mind as well.
Well, there's a lot that goes. There's so many moving parts, guys. There's from the determining which commercials to make, who to target with the commercials, whether the scripts are hitting, whether the locations are hitting that are in the TV ads, and then determining who to reach out in terms of field. We had like 60,000 volunteer shifts, and there was over 120,000 postcards that were written to folks just from our campaign, not even mention all of our partners. And that direct voter contact, I mean, people get sick of it by the end of the election cycle, guys. I mean, I've gotten probably 20 postcards and 30 pieces of mail and, 16 texts. And I mean, but it's that voter contact that verges on being really annoying as hell that moves people, though, to take some kind of action. And then there's all the digital, it took a bit to convince Jon that, TikTok may be a good avenue to reach another, set of folks. And so we didn't use TikTok in the beginning, but at some point, we ended up using TikTok to reach folks and to have a little fun as well. And then there's the communications folks who have to figure out how are we going to earn some media. We've got the paid media piece down, but what stories are we telling? After Steven works to, do these roundtables to where we're talking with HBCU folks about the public policy that Jon will draft. After we draft the public policy, how are we going to get some earned media around it? We want folks to know what we're doing. So, and then there's the mail program. There's all these pieces, and all of them require a ton of strategy and a ton of stepping back and thinking if there's any adjustments that need to be made. If you went back and look at our campaign, you'd see some themes in the fall of 2019, some in the earlier part of 20, but at the end of it, near the runoff, Jon came up with health, jobs, and justice. And you'd think that was our theme the entire time, but it was something we needed to hang on, we needed people to come away and have something that they could say that they know that Jon Ossoff is about, and it was health, jobs, and justice. So there's a ton of moving parts, Dean, and each one of these had their intricacies that we've spent hours hammering out and then readjusting and always making sort of game day decisions about how we need to adjust and adapt.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to give you the last word. I do want to thank a number of people for being able to present this event for everybody. But first, I have to shout out the entire College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, the faculty and the staff that just make this possible, that make us possible. Specific thanks go to Jackie Edwards. You might wave right there, who's coordinated everything, the RSVPs, and reached out to everyone. Also, Nicole Williams, Christina Cano, Lorraine Brown, the person we affectionately know as MJ, Martha Savelio Johnson as well, and the incomparable, the very well-dressed Tracy Baum, who took the questions from the chat right there. And just another thank you, immense thank you. You make us proud. We're inspired. Your story is tremendous, and we sit in awe. So thank you, Steven Parker. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for doing what you do. Thanks for the ongoing contributions. And the final word is yours.
Guys, I'm so happy I ended up at CSUN and not San Francisco State University. I'm very proud to be a Matador, and Dean, anytime you call for whatever it is you need, I'm happy to show up. Anytime I come back, I tell y'all, I'll walk the campus. CSUN was everything for me. And I'm forever grateful. So however I can be helpful, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you very much. And thank you for all of our guests who took the time out from their lunch hour to join us. We appreciate you, and we also continue to hope to see you. We'll have some other opportunities in the future. To everybody, please stay extremely well, stay very careful, and take good care of your loved ones as well. Bye-bye. Thank you, Stephen.
All right, you're welcome. Bye, everyone.